Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 4 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner? Absent. Councilmember Dish?
Present.
Councilmember Griswold?
Present.
Councilmember Song?
Here.
Councilmember Grand?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here.
Councilmember Nelson?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs? Here. Councilmember Ramlawi?
Present.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
Yes, Mayor, we do. We felt that in light of the circumstances that we're dealing with, it would be appropriate to provide a briefing for you at the beginning of this meeting regarding the situation with the Huron River. We are prepared to provide a briefing and answer some questions, although we will not be able to answer all questions that have been posed to us this afternoon. We will continue to provide answers in the coming days on the website that we've set up. But we do have Brian Steglitz here with us, and he is prepared to provide a briefing to the members of council. Mr. Steglitz.
Thank you, Administrator Mahoney. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, Brian Steglitz, I'm the Water Treatment Services Unit Manager and serving as the Interim Public Services Area Administrator. Just want to make sure that people can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'd like to just start with the comment that the city's drinking water currently is safe to drink, and that we at the Water Treatment Services Unit are all focused as our #1 priority of ensuring that that continues to be true and that we will be protecting in public health. And that is our primary focus and mission. So with that in mind, I understand that there's a lot of anxiety around this particular event, and we've received many questions from you and many questions from the community. We've been doing our best to triage those and provide answers to those questions. As you can imagine, we've got also a lot of questions from the media, and we're between myself and the communication manager, Ms. Wandrash, we're doing our best to try to stay on top of all those questions while also trying to lead the city's response. So I appreciate your patience in giving us some time to respond to those questions, and hopefully I can answer some of those tonight. So I'd like to first just start with what we do know. So we know that there was a release over the weekend of 10,000 gallons of 5% hexavalent chromium into the storm sewer from Tri-Bar Industries, into the sanitary sewer, excuse me, from Tri-Bar Industries, and that has transmitted to the Wixom wastewater treatment plant. Some amount of that chemical has been released into Norton Creek, which is where the Wixom wastewater treatment plant discharges, and that's a tributary of the Huron River. We don't know that maybe some of that chemical is currently retained at the Wixom wastewater treatment plant. They're continuing to investigate that now. A pretty broad response team. I'm sorry?
We had commentary in the room, Mr. Steglitz. Please continue. Okay.
A pretty broad response team has been formed that includes many people from the state of Michigan, Eagle, and there are many folks assembled in order to develop a coordinated response. Eagle has, at this point, collected 11 samples from the Huron River downstream of the Wixom wastewater treatment plant, and all of those samples of the water have been found to be non-detect for chromium. They are continuing to sample. Today they have collected, I think, 24 more samples along stretches of the Huron River, and some of those much closer to Ann Arbor, including at the entrance to Barton Pond. And we hope to have those results within the next day or so. In addition to that, the city is doing its own sampling, and we are also collecting samples at our intake at the Huron River and Barton Pond. This event is truly a coordinated event. We are working very closely with Eagle. There's an incident command team that has been assembled that's meeting every day. I'm participating in that, representing the city, as well as Chief Kennedy and Sydney Parmenter, the emergency manager. There's also a group of PIOs that are communication managers participating in, as long with representatives from the state and the county. So this is truly a very large coordinated effort. EPA has also been involved. So what else are we doing at the City of Ann Arbor? So in addition to collecting samples and continuing to monitor and track the movement of this into our intakes in Barton Pond, we've also ordered some materials that will be arriving over the next day or two that will allow us to do some treatability studies over the next week to determine our ability to remove this chemical from the source waters. And we hope to have more information about that work over the coming week. The other item that I'd like to mention is, well, let me stop there for a second, and I'm going to address some of the questions that we received. I also, please understand that this is very much a dynamic situation. So more information is coming in every day, and we are adapting and trying to pivot based on the information that we receive. One of the important things that we're focused on now, associated with the work that Eagle is doing, is hopefully the work that they're doing will help us identify where the contamination is along the stretch of the Huron, which is going to be very important for us in terms of developing our response plans. So we'll have a much more clarity on when and if it would reach Barton Pond. And at this point, that window is very large, as you all know, somewhere between 2 weeks and maybe even a month to 2 months. And that has to do just with the complexity of the water channel and the number of impoundments along the river between here and where the contamination entered the river. And there's so many variables, it's really difficult to predict. So we're hoping the sampling effort that Eagle is undertaking will help provide clarity. So I will choose some of the questions that you have submitted to me to answer, and these are, I've selected the ones that we're seeing probably most commonly from customers and the media. The first question being, if chemicals are detected in the Ann Arbor water supply, what action will the city take? So again, we are focused on looking at how the treatment process that we currently have in Ann Arbor can be modified to accommodate removing this new chemical, and we hope to have more information about that over the coming week. Is there an alternative source of water identified that can be used instead of the Huron River? So we're fortunate in Ann Arbor to have 2 sources of water to the city's water system. We have the Huron River, and we also have wells located on the south side of town. And we blend these at the water treatment plant. So this allows us some flexibility in case we have an issue with one of our water supplies. So we would be taking advantage of the well source, which would not be impacted by this contamination and spill event, if as needed. Should residents be stockpiling water or buying bottled water? The city's water currently is safe to drink, and at this point, there's no need for residents to be stockpiling water or buying bottled water. Do customers need to have a home treatment device? Customers do not need to install any home treatment devices. Again, the water at this point in time remains safe to drink, and we intend to keep it in that same fashion. I think those are the majority of the questions that I think are the most common. I understand that there's several others that have been submitted to us, and it is our intent to respond to those in due time as we have, as the communications manager and I have time over the coming days, and we will provide those responses in writing. At this point, I could turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, and Administrator Mahoney. At your discretion, I can still be here available if there's any burning questions that folks have that I wasn't able to cover.
I think, Mayor, to follow up on the larger picture in terms of our approach to the situation, it's critical for the council and the community to understand that we will be addressing this in an ongoing fashion, that communication will continue to evolve, and we will be communicating with regularity to council members, but also placing information on the website that we have established. There will also be additional communication that's forthcoming from the state, and we will share those messages as we get them. So this situation is fluid. It will continue to evolve over the next several days, and we will communicate to you as appropriate and as we have more answers to questions that have been posed. We are also trying to balance dealing with the plethora of media questions, and so that too is something that has to be factored in. So we just wanted to bring this to you this evening, and we appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment reserve. I'm sorry, we do have an introduction. It is now time for our monthly update from the chair of our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, you have the con.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Jackson. I'm the chair of Ann Arbor's Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. I'd like to begin this evening by acknowledging both our incoming and departing council members. Our city is best served when our leaders are engaged. So ICPOC's doors will always be open to you, whether that's to educate you about the work we do or to hear the concerns that you or your constituents have about policing in our community. Such leadership is certainly not restricted to those holding office, so please don't be shy in engaging with us. Thank all of you for your service, whether you're outgoing or incoming. Tonight, I'd like to talk about communication and community engagement. As many people are aware, a couple of weeks ago, we had an incident where the Ann Arbor Police Department released a flyer containing some tone-deaf language for a series of community engagement events they plan to hold. And while one could commend the AAPD for making an effort to engage our community in contexts outside of law enforcement, this incident demonstrated a longstanding problem with the department. That it did not occur to the Ann Arbor Police Department that inviting the community to get booked would not come across as playful or fun speaks to the dire need for both more diversity within the department and better lines of communication between the department and the community. At the end of the day, communication requires both a speaker and an audience, and the reality is that no matter what AAPD's intentions, their message will not get across if they can't use language appropriate to their very diverse audience. The AAPD can do better, should do better, and already has the tools to do so. Similarly, the city is currently working on 2 projects that would benefit from broad community engagement. The first of those will be the search for a new police chief. No matter whom the city ultimately chooses to hire, we need to make sure that at the forefront of a hiring process is a set of community values that we want our next police chief to reflect. Local leaders must commit to standing up for these values and then ensure that the next chief makes changes that reflect them. As such, the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission would like to be a part of the hiring discussions much earlier in the process than we were last time. By the time we were brought in during the last search, the field had been narrowed to only 3 candidates, which meant that we didn't have the opportunity to participate in looking for candidates whose ideas reflected the kind of feedback we've been receiving from community members. So we'd love to offer that kind of feedback and participate in the process as the search criteria are being developed. We'd also like to advocate for broad outreach in the upcoming discussions about developing an unarmed response program. It's critical that we're including demographically diverse people who live and work in the city, as well as people across a wide range of lived experiences. That means doing the footwork to include the unhoused in conversations about what they'd like to see in an unarmed response program, to talk to neurodivergent people, to talk to undocumented people, to talk to groups such as faith groups who serve as warming centers, to organizations such as the Dispute Resolution Center, to organizations such as the Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice. This project and the potential development of an unarmed response program has the potential to meet the needs of so many disenfranchised groups within our community. And it would be a huge disappointment if the potential for such a program were hindered due to a lack of imagination and creativity. Thank you.
Thank you. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. We can have only one person speaking at a time. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Mojan Savabayasafani.
Hello, Ann Arbor. When I first came here, I thought I was just going to be telling you that the mayor and his slate have pulled a fast one, a coup, and they have pushed every candidate who would even remotely disagree with them from this bunch. They've pumped in hundreds and thousands of dollars, and now Mr. Mayor is going to be without any objection to his proposals, and he can get it his way every time. And I thought that was the bad news. There is a worse news. I told this bunch 2 years ago that you should close down Arbor. It's releasing PFAS. I told them it's no use that the PFAS is going to trap some of it in filters. You got to shut them down. And they didn't. And now today, we have hexavalent chromium leaking into our waters. And they want us to believe what their little boy over there says, that, oh, nothing to worry about. Our water is safe. Don't worry about buying water or filtering your water. Are we supposed to believe them when they have lied to us so many times about quality of our water in the past? Are we supposed to believe this bunch? It's unbelievable. And now they have every member in this group removed and added their own buddies on. Hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of money was pumped into Ann Arbor City Council elections. And now there is no disagreement. They're all going to go with the mayor all the time for another 2 full years. This is a mockery of democracy. This is a mockery of the system. And it is not just in Ann Arbor. This is the failure of liberal democracy across the United States of America. And I'm talking to those 82% who did not vote. Only 18% of people in this town voted. And I know what that means. That means you have no respect for the system and you don't want to get involved. But I'm telling you, if you don't get involved, hyenas like these will come for you. They've already come for you. They're already telling you to drink the water that has chromium in it. They're already telling you dioxin is spreading, but oh, we're doing everything we can. They're fucking liars. They're coming for your life. If you don't get involved, if you don't kick their asses out of here, they're coming for your ass. They've come. They're here. Stand up and fight for it. Because if you don't, they're going to have your children's lives, they're going to have your grandchildren's lives, just like they have in the past 60 years when they allowed the dioxin to go every which way. I don't even know if it's possible to clean it up anymore. Wake up, Ann Arbor. Don't let these hyenas lead you to places you don't want to go. I'm talking to those 82% that didn't vote. Vote, come out and vote these hyenas out.
Thank you. Our
Shame
next
on
speaker is Blaine Coleman.
Don't you touch me.
Excuse me, are you going to call my name or what?
I called your name already.
Okay, can you start the clock? Thank you. My name's Blaine Coleman. And, you know, I'm here to remind the council members who have been thrown out by this big money coup, could have been different. Even with that steamroller of money coming at you, it still could have been different. You could have stood up for something. You would have been better known, better respected, better liked. You would have had a better chance. Hayner's not here. Griswold's here. Ollie's here. Who else got thrown out? I forget. Elizabeth's here. You could have made a name for yourself standing up for the simple 7-word resolution. We are against military aid to Israel. I hope you haven't forgotten that Israel massacres thousands of Palestinians with your tax money periodically. Israel also massacres hundreds of Palestinians periodically with your tax money. Israel is a state that was built on the massacre of Palestinians and the robbery of Palestinian land. Still is, always has been. You don't have to happily fund it. You can at least say no and save an awful lot of Palestinian lives, Arab lives, and Muslim lives. But you won't. This city council, with your help, threw all its weight against every Palestinian human rights resolution. Some of you made little squeaks like you were going to push for this resolution against military aid to Israel. Griswold made some squeaks like she was going to do it. Actually, she said she would, and she vanished. Nelson never said she would. She wasn't hostile, but she never said she would. Ollie never said he would. Hayner said he would. Hayner said he wouldn't back down. He did. He vanished. Griswold vanished. If you had stood up for human rights, even now, if you stood up for human rights and you did your best to push this resolution, you would make a name for yourself. You would be better known, better respected.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Evan Soliotis.
Hello, everyone. In continuation of my earlier presentation proposing that Council create an ombudsperson's office as a citizen's advocate, where residents can affordably file complaints against city maladministration, I continue with the example of my mother Lola's mistreatment by certain city officials. Exhibit 6 from the document set that I previously passed out to council members is an email from a city attorney stating that they instructed the senior building official not to communicate with Lola's grandson, ignoring 91-year-old Lola's affidavit authorizing her grandson, violating Lola's right to have an advocate, and obstructing Lola's effort to renew her rental certificate of compliance. Exhibit 7 is a court transcript where the same city attorney reverses the false 8-month-old claim that Lola's grandson was not authorized, and suddenly argues in open court that Lola's grandson was in fact authorized to interact with the city. In short, Lola's grandson was either unauthorized or authorized as it suited the convenience of city officials. Exhibit 9 is an improper July 2021 ticket issued in violation of several state statutes. It was issued at the direction of the senior building official and falsely cited work without a permit for work that should not have been ticketed, for reasons including that building permits had been obtained in 2017 and because the cited work was beyond the statute of limitations for ticketing. This ticket was dismissed by the city after Lola's attorney said that he wanted to subpoena city officials to testify in court. Nonetheless, the defeated ticket cost Lola roughly $10,000 in legal fees and costs. Exhibit 10 are 4 state statutes that city officials violated in their aggressive pursuit of Lola. As stated in my previous presentation, the games city officials are playing have pushed Lola's income under the poverty line and have caused continuous losses which will soon surpass $50,000. My next presentation will provide the most troubling evidence of all, indication of the city administration's improper influence over our local courts in its failed attempt to prosecute Lola. Our family no longer feels safe in Washtenaw County and the city of Ann Arbor due to a demonstrated willingness to ignore court rules, rules of professional conduct, and constitutionally protected due process rights on the part of various officials. In summation, an ombudsperson is a citizen's advocate that regulates the city administration by providing full-time professionals to receive resident complaints and act on valid complaints, thereby assisting our part-time council members who have no staff to provide a potent protective service to our local community. To quote Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessels, an independent ombudsperson helps instill trust and faith in government on the part of the public. 5 council members support ombudsperson's creation. I speak with another tomorrow. I hope this proposal will shortly gain the support of all council members. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Nelson.
Hi, I want to thank the Ward 4 residents who attended the public hearing last night at the Planning Commission about conversion of the retail space on the first floor of the George. I'll be posting information on my website about how that meeting went. I was able to watch most, but not all of that part of the meeting. I'd also like folks to know that there's going to be a public hearing. Hold on a second. There's going to be a public hearing for TC1 rezoning of West Stadium on August 16th at 7 p.m. Residents within 300 feet of the proposed area received a postcard about this, but I've posted information on my website for any residents who might want to participate in that public hearing at the Planning Commission. Thanks.
Councilmember Griswold.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone who participated in the primary election on Tuesday. And also I want to I'd like to thank staff. Even though the focus has been on the election and it is summertime, staff have made significant progress in 3 areas. The first one is Chapter 40, which is being reviewed by the legal department. Chapter 40 is regarding vegetation, and the revisions also included the ability to replace a lawn with a more pollinator-friendly natural surface covering. Number 2, the resolution for U of M workforce housing, and that's based on the 3 principles of equity, sustainability, and Vision Zero, which refers to transportation. One of the opportunities would be living, learning laboratories for the students, and I am very thankful that a dialogue has begun between the city and the University of Michigan. And lastly, a meeting will happen tomorrow regarding the resolution to optimize our initiatives. Again, transportation, sustainability, and equity. We know that in some cases, friction is caused in the community when there's conflicting information in those initiatives, and we hope to identify and revise them. Last, I'd like to thank Representative Robbie. Today in the news, he called for shutting down the Tri-Bar facility.
2 years too late.
And I hope that happens. Thank you.
2 years too late.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
please,
I'm here.
please. Councilmember Song.
I'd like to bring attention to United Way Washtenaws recent release of the ALICE report. ALICE is the Asset Limited Income Constrained Employee report, and that represents how our communities in need are still trying to work and make ends meet. That's at uwashtenaw.org/ALICE. It indicates 31% of our households struggle to afford the basic necessities of housing, childcare, food, health care, and transportation. This is a report that's published every year for the county. And this is, I encourage folks to take a look at it. It gives us a good sense of why we support utilities and needs so that we can make sure our community members are taken care of. It includes children in financial hardship. There's a dashboard for that, as well as with measuring what the needs are for people with disabilities. Thanks.
Councilmember Radina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to also briefly echo thanks to our clerk and her excellent staff for administering another election, particularly with, new precinct numbers, new boundaries, and obviously the continued influx of absentee ballots and things like that. And so just really appreciate their hard work and into the early morning of Wednesday to make sure that results were put out for the community. I also just wanted to let folks know, since it is still a new commission, that Renters Commission has scheduled another special session for August 10th at 6:30 p.m. and have established their new standing time for the third Thursday of the month at 7:30. Thanks.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Briggs.
I wanted to thank staff for the presentation today on the spill in the Huron River. I appreciate hearing that update and looking forward to, I appreciate the website that's up and look forward to getting more written communications on the subject. I know residents are very interested in this subject, as are all of us.
We can't hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah. No guts.
Ma'am, please cease interrupting council members as they're speaking.
Additionally, I just wanted to highlight the community conversations that the city administrator will be having this month around downtown. There's going to be one on Monday, August 8th at 3:30 p.m. and then again on Tuesday, August 9th at 6 p.m. That's going to be an online Zoom meeting. There's information about that on the city's website. It's a good opportunity to share information with our city administrator about your vision for the downtown.
Further communication from council. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointment that was presented to the City Council on July 18, 2022, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Christiana Gulasik. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. I'd like to recommend the following for your consideration of the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority Board of Directors, Simi Barr. Further, to the Public Market Advisory Commission, I'd like to recommend for your consideration at our next meeting, Eric Farrell. I too would like to extend my thanks to the clerk's office and her staff, as well as to the hundreds of community members who participate in our elections. Elections, whenever they occur, whether they're special, primary, or general, are an opportunity for members of the public to go to the polls and make their voices heard, but it would not be accomplished without the support of staff and without the support of untold numbers of community members willing to do their part. The members, the city, and indeed all community members are grateful for their participation, their diligence, and their civic, the exercise of their civic duties. We now have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the agenda. Pardon me, discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The consent agenda is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. With respect to CA 10, CA 11. We now come to public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. Speakers need not have signed up in advance, but your speech at the public hearing must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Online, our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. Here in the room, the clock will do so. In each case, when your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend tables 5.15-1, primary use table, and 5.17-2, two-family residential zoning district dimensions of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak at this public hearing? Ms. Boudry, is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment? Press star 6 to unmute your phone.
Good evening. Good evening. This is Tom Stolbert calling from Lower Town here in Ann Arbor. I want to thank you all. This, if it passes tonight, will increase the wealth of myself and my small investment group. We happen to be fond of duplexes and have a number of duplex lots. Our unit yield that we're able to achieve will increase with the passing of this. So why do I say this? The city has passed some other things recently and is looking at other things coming forward that increase the wealth of other people unconditionally. And there's been some criticism of that and some questioning whether we should know whose wealth is being increased when the city passes certain new rules, new laws. So I'm just going to thank you and let everybody know that this one will increase our wealth. And it's unconditional. We don't have to build anything. We can sell it. We can take a loan on the property, on the increased value of our property, and spend that money on something else. We can build something affordable or not, our choice. We can build something sustainable or not, our choice. So it really is a real freebie for us. So I want to thank you all for that. Also, because there's been a lot of the mayor's supporters that have spread a lot of lies about me in order to try to discredit the messages that I have, because I have development experience. And in the past, they've made some false accusations about me doing things motivated for my own personal gain in terms of wealth. Those have all been false, and right now, so it makes sense for me to let you know that this one, although I don't know that I've been accused of anything here, I just want to let you know that you will be increasing my personal wealth and that of my small investment group if you pass this tonight. So on with the details. I think you should discuss the interaction with other planning initiatives. You have upcoming looking at eliminating parking minimums, so you should talk about how that interacts with this. The site plan thresholds were recently changed, so we should talk about how that interacts with this. If somebody brings a new duplex plan under this, converting a single-family residence duplex or new construction duplex, where does it go? What body? Does it stop at the planning manager or go to planning commission, et cetera? That was all covered in the site plan threshold, but I think a public discussion of what those interactions are would be helpful for the public in general. I want to take this last moment to support the gentleman who spoke in favor of an ombudsman. It's much needed at the city. There's a lot of, as good as a lot of the staff is, there's a lot of holes that people can fall in, individual citizens, and they end up going to their city council members as a last resort in terms of getting help. As an ombudsman would make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Jaskiewicz, do you have a comment?
Hi, my name is Adam Jaskiewicz. I'm in the 4th Ward. I would just like to give my support to this. I think it's a great idea to make it possible so that these lots that are supposed to be able to have duplexes on them can have duplexes on them. I just have one question that I'm hoping can be answered in the discussions on this. One of the things that this does is increase the rate of existing R2A property compliance with lot size and width standards from 29% to 74%. I was just wondering what would be required to get us to 100%? Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Hi. So I'm excited about this proposal. I live in a neighborhood where on my street in the last couple of years, there's been a couple of big footing projects where people bought old houses, tore them down, and built much more expensive houses to replace them, and they're all single-family homes. So the affordability of my neighborhood was drastically decreased, while the number of people who can benefit from living in my neighborhood has not increased. A lot of people, this is a city that a lot of people love, and a lot of people should, in my opinion, be able to share in the things that I love about this city. And so I'd like to see more people in our city. And this is a small step towards doing it. I'm a little concerned that, a duplex isn't going to be a sufficiently attractive project for somebody to build. I hope we'll get some. I would prefer to see quadplexes or even larger to be, encouraged around here. That the house next to me sold for $880,000 last time when it was big-footed, and I can just imagine that if that had been 4 houses, each selling at like even $300,000, that would be a lot of people. That would be a lot more people could buy it much more affordably. But even if it had been a duplex, each of them selling for $440,000 or something like that, then even that would be better than an $880,000 house. So I'm happy to see more people sharing my community, and I hope this is something that'll get us towards that goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the minutes of the regular session meeting minutes of July 18, 2022. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend tables 5.15-1, primary use table, and 5.17-2, two-family residential zoning district dimensions of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, Mayor. So there are 2 amendments here to the city's development code. One would allow religious assembly use as a primary use in the M1 or limited industrial district. That amendment was requested by Oxford Properties, who has an existing religious institution tenant operating in the M1 district as currently a non-conforming use. The second amendment is the one that has come up a few times in the last few minutes, and that makes amendments to the minimum lot size in R2A zoning districts to enable that zoning designation to accomplish what it was supposed to when it was created in 1963. And that was to make room for more people to live in Ann Arbor by making it possible to develop duplexes alongside single-family homes on similarly sized lots. 20 years after the R2A district was created in 1984, City Council amended, in other words, it was created in 63, but this happens in 84. City Council amended the R2A district to increase the width and size of the lot that you would need in order to develop a duplex by roughly 30%. That increase went against the intent of the R2A zone by making it illegal to build duplexes on the vast majority of the lots that had been rezoned for that very purpose. This amendment is a course correction that makes it legal to develop duplexes again on most of the 1,400 lots currently zoned R2A. If planning staff is here, I would like to ask them to answer why we didn't go all the way to 100%, which I understood was a problem of diminishing returns, but I'm sure they have a more eloquent explanation. And perhaps also to address the interactions with changes to the site review thresholds. And I'm happy to give my second round speaking to them.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We did not approach, the staff and the Planning Commission didn't approach this as trying to make every lot in the R2A conforming, rather than trying to find an appropriate size to amend these dimensions. I don't know the answer because our data in R2A lots is blended with condo data. So I can't be definitive, but my best estimate is if the goal was every R2A lot to be conforming, I think that the lot size would probably have to be reduced to around the neighborhood of 1,800 square feet. That's just from a quick analysis of the data in place. As it relates to the site plan review question, there would be no change in this regard. Duplexes have always been permissible just through a permit process. So that would remain stable since before amendments to our site plan review thresholds and after.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Griswold.
Given that I frequently hear that we want to eliminate single-family zoning, and I'm not going to weigh in on that right now, I have to agree with Michelle Hughes. Why are we stopping at only 2 units, especially in the near downtown area? And why aren't we just doing a comprehensive planning process where we could identify lots in certain areas that could have 4 or 6 or 8 units instead of 2? It just seems like we're doing this piecemeal and it's becoming very convoluted. And if we have a crisis and we need housing, we need to get it built. And this doesn't seem to be doing it. Thank you. So I guess my question that got lost there is why only 2 units? I know it's zoned for that, but why can't we change that category to 4 or 6 or 8?
Certainly, staff and planning commission could follow up on any such direction to do so by council. This was I think in the past, there have been broader conversations to look at our R4C district and our R2 districts. Much of our downtown core is R4C, and it's not to say that there aren't opportunities, I think, to improve that zoning district, but this was intended to be a sort of concise in the parlay of zoning amendments to really just focus on the duplex zoning district where many of the lots are existing.
Further discussion? Councilmember Rumlawi.
Thank you. I've had some First Ward residents reach out to me today to express concerns on this. So these views are from the First Ward because Councilmember Hayner is not here to address them. Just like in the case of some ADUs regulations that we changed in other ordinance changes, is that there will be the concern is that there's going to be increased pressure on what currently is affordable housing and lots that are affordable just because of the increased potential that these lots have with the greater density that is allowed. Now, I have a separate concern of mine, and that is stormwater runoff, stormwater management and drainage, and the increase of impervious surfaces while we continue to develop land. Many times we're not taking into consideration stormwater and in the runoff. It comes with more impervious surfaces, and this is happening quite often in the Fifth Ward. And I don't know if anything is going to be done, what's being done to address this issue. If staff can respond to that concern, what we're going to do with the increased water that we're receiving while we're taking away more of the earth that would absorb it. What's being done to address that?
Well, the good news is when development happens, we improve that stormwater condition. As an old city, the majority of our land does not have stormwater controls in place. And so whenever we have a new development or an expansion, that is in fact an opportunity for us to improve the stormwater capture quality and flow rate as opposed to what was there prior. So while that can happen at times with an increase in impervious surface, typically when a new investment happens, it results in a net improvement in the stormwater for that particular property. Right now, last I heard, I think about 15% of the city's property has stormwater control. So every time an investment happens, whether it's on a small scale or a large scale, we start adding to that percentage increment.
My time is about to run out, but I'm going to have to speak again.
Further discussion? Councilmember?
With all due respect, I'll push back on that. I know many residents in the Fifth Ward would also agree with me that that's not the case, that development is occurring on parts of the city and parts of the neighborhoods that were the de facto basin that caught the rainwater and stored the water during heavy rains. Those properties and that land now is being developed, and those waters now are ending up in someone else's property who happens to be a few feet lower in grade. I simply don't agree with the assertion or the assumption that we're improving stormwater management in many of these cases. And now, in some, most likely, perhaps, but I've seen it. Residents have experienced it, where this type of development leads to somebody else absorbing the cost. Flooded yards, flooded basements, flooded front yards. I have a lot of emails stating this, and I would like to know how, in this case, it's going to be improved. What actually happens in this case, because we don't have the conveyances in many areas to take on additional runoff. And residents are being told, if you want this addressed, you have to pay for it with the infrastructure because the infrastructure doesn't exist. So they have to, have a special assessment district created and pay for the infrastructure that currently is not there. Who's going to pay for the infrastructure in the cases that's not there while we're increasing development? Is there...
Mr. Leonard? Is he frozen? Or is he merely stoic?
He's frozen.
Mr. Dahoney, are you in a position to respond?
Mr. Mayor, the question that the council member poses is actually a broader one than the item that's before you this evening. We do have areas of the city where we are struggling with trying to find a solution to stormwater issues. We also are hindered by current litigation regarding issues or our options for addressing that. We have been studying to find additional options for us. I certainly don't challenge at all the issues that the council member raises about people having to deal with the assessment as an approach to resolving their situation. The short answer is we do not yet have an option to put on the table to address the situation. We are trying to develop one. We're working across multiple departments, including the law department and the finance department. And as soon as we have an option that we think is viable, we will bring it forward.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I just wanted to say definitely am in support of these changes. I think this is it makes sense that we go back and make sure that our zoning categories are working as we had intended them to work. R2A was supposed to be a zoning district that allowed for duplexes, and we made some changes in the 80s and made that not possible. And so this is really correcting a past wrong so that we actually have our code more aligned with how it's supposed to function. So I'm glad to see that working, glad to see this change moving forward. I appreciate Mr. Mahoney's comments. I think there's a bit of a conflation about what's happening here, the stormwater management issues. Councilmember Rumlowy, of course, is correct that this is a big issue in the Fifth Ward. We've mentioned it before at the table, and I'm very thankful that Public Services has been working pretty diligently with us over the past few months to identify solutions that will better serve our residents in the future. But that is something that we're working through, staff is working through, and I hope that we will have something to present the public with shortly.
Further discussions? Councilmember Song.
It might be worth repeating that this is work that is a course correction and makes it legal to develop duplexes, that we already have properties of value on these lots. We're not expecting a rash of conversions to duplexes, but hopefully this will encourage that work. Currently, we see people building on these lots. They're replacing more modest single-family homes with larger ones. So as we've heard already, that bigfooting is occurring, which is creating greater pressure on affordability rather than the idea that density will be making it more difficult for folks to afford homes in our city. So we're not competing against density. I think we're giving folks options.
Further discussion? I'm delighted that this ordinance change will be moving forward. I think it's important that we give property owners a fair bit of flexibility on how to use their larger lots. I will say that the problem of stormwater, systemic stormwater management, of course, continues to be something that I'm glad that staff is working on, and I know is of important concern to many residents throughout the city, and certainly in the Fifth Ward, but also many other wards. I will say, however, with respect to this, I'd like to highlight an ordinance that was passed in 2010, which I was, one of the lead workers on, and that provides that when there is a change on one single or two family residential properties, when the impervious surface increases by 200 and more square feet, which is not particularly much, that in those instances, that triggers stormwater management requirement on site. And so while these changes, a change to permit duplexes in several contexts, may increase the amount of impervious surface, if it does so more than 200 feet on any particular lot, then that triggers rigorous stormwater management on that lot. This is all to say that this change ought not to affect a stormwater problem. It ought to be part of a stormwater solution as a result of its interaction with the 2010 ordinance. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to approve the sale of city-owned property at 1146 South Maple to Avalon Housing, Inc. for the development of affordable housing. Moved by Councilmember Grand, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion, please, of DC1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. With 10 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. DC2, resolution for community events fund disbursements from the fiscal year 2023 budget. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'm excited to see this come forward. I just want to thank some community members who have reached out to us about concerns about our process. And I want to thank, first and foremost, Sarah Higgins, who, Ms. Higgins does much of the work to make sure that much of our beloved community events can get reimbursed for some of their city expenses. And it's a way that we can help support these events that offer such great community benefit to our residents and visitors. So a big thank you to Ms. Higgins. Councilmember Dish and I were able to have a really productive meeting and talk about some changes that we'll be making to the process, not this year because it seemed unfair to do it mid-course, but next year to try to just, in a way that still makes these funds incredibly accessible and keeps the process pretty straightforward, we'll get a little more to that community benefit and make sure that the funds, as there's some changes in the city with cost to barriers in particular that we're not charging events for anymore, that we're really just more accurately capturing the cost from the city and also the benefit to the community. So I want to thank some of the area associations for raising those concerns with us, and hope that we'll have an even clearer and more accurate way to help distribute these funds in the future.
Further discussion? Councilmember Nelson.
I want to thank Councilmember Grant for offering that explanation, and I'm actually going to ask for a little bit more because no one has ever made an inquiry to me about this topic until like 2 days ago. I'm curious, like, what is the timeline for, I mean, I guess how it happened this year, or maybe how you anticipate it happening in the future in terms of people applying or community organizations applying for these funds?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly when the date goes out. We do have a website on the city, so it's always, the application is always available throughout the year. I know Ms. Higgins does reach out to organizations each year that have received funds in the past and has tried to do a little more outreach to get that application, but I could check the website, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But it's an annual process that happens so that the funds are distributed for the following year. So typically we have these meetings in the late spring, summertime to distribute the funds.
Thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. DC3, resolution regarding legal response efforts relative to the spill of hexavalent chromium into the Huron River by Arbor Manufacturing. Moved by Councilmember Rodino, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of DC3. I'd like to kick this off and basically say this: the Arbor's periodic pollution of the Huron River is, of course, outrageous and entirely unacceptable. For my part, I'm grateful to the engagement of staff, the rigorous and ongoing engagement of staff to work to keep our water safe. I'm grateful for the engagement of a number of our elected officials, including Governor Whitmer, Representative Dingell, Senator Irwin, all of whom have reached out to me, Representative Robbie as well. I'm further, too, grateful for the engagement of EGLE and the EPA, and look to them and others with regulatory authority to take rigorous, definitive, and conclusive action. Arbor's pollution of the Huron River needs to end. We at the city do not have regulatory authority, but we do have the ability to bring aggressive and appropriate action in court to seek injunctions and damages and efforts to do our part to cover our costs and to be compensated for the damages that are accruing as a result of Arbor's wrongdoing. And I am confident that we will do so. Further discussion? Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, I'm on the Environmental Commission. I'd like to be listed as a co-sponsor. I'd also want to acknowledge the assistance that's been offered by members from the Environmental Commission as well as CARD, and assure the public that this is really an all hands on deck. It's not just governmental entities. There are also private citizens in this community that have this expertise. They're also offering to help. And lastly, I want to point out that if you want more information, it's on the city's homepage. But It's on the right-hand side under What Do You Need, and it's chromium spill info. So please go there. Staff is updating it as more information becomes available.
Further discussion, Councilmember Dish.
I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor if I haven't been added already. And I'd like to thank the sponsors and the legal department for having this on the agenda and being willing to jump to this. I know that you're jumping to a lot because there's a lot of horrible stuff happening right now, frankly. But we did receive a lot of comments from people who wrote in asking about legal action. And I did post the city's website on Nextdoor yesterday, and there's actually been a fairly high-level conversation there and information-rich and constrained, but many people have asked about legal action, so I'm very happy to see this.
Councilmember Riggs.
Yes, I'm glad to see this moving forward. We just request to be added as a co-sponsor. And another helpful resource to folks in the community, I think, is the Huron River Watershed Council. They have developed resources and information on this issue as well. And I know they're a very trusted resource in our community as well.
Councilmember Lowy.
Thank you. This is, I think, something that is something we should do automatically. We're in charge of protecting the public safety and health, and this is just another issue that we have to address. I ask, though, based on my experience with Gelman, that we do not have a gag order placed on us by attorneys in a way that we cannot share information with the public. The information that we receive hopefully is allowed to be disseminated. There's way too much sometimes kept away from the public, and I understand at times why. We are not involved in an active litigation, but my fear is what I've experienced before, and that is not a whole lot of sunshine. I ask for that, and I also ask, are we going to be reaching out to outside counsel that is specifically trained in these areas, as we did in the case of Gelman, obviously. So a couple things there. I know in the past we've had to explicitly ask for information ahead of time from the legal department that we can share publicly. And then again, are we going to be reaching out to an outside firm to assist in this matter?
Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Amlavi. I hope the fact that the Office of the City Attorney jumped and put this resolution on tonight is an indication of our willing to be transparent. And I will provide the council whatever information I can within the constraints of court rules and procedure. I must respect attorney-client privilege, but I understand the need as a citizen and a resident for transparency, so we will definitely make that balance. We will be reaching out to experts in environmental law because it's a very specialized field of law. It's very statutory. So the answer to that question is yes. It is no intent of the Office of the City Attorney to filter information. Our intention always is to make it as understandable, as less legalese as possible, and that we will continue to do. But you will receive regular updates as council members on the issues that we are dealing with in this matter.
Thank you.
Councilor Breyer.
Thank you. Thank you to our city attorney for getting right on this. And I think there's broad support at the table for doing this. My feeling is just that our response cannot be strong enough or swift enough. This company has shown itself to, unfortunately, be a bad actor with PFAS discharges, with air quality problems, and now this. And we need to take every action we can possibly take in order to protect our river and to hold them accountable.
Councilmember Griswold.
I have complete confidence in our city attorney. I would ask that we pause and evaluate what happened with Gelman, and there are some lessons to be learned. And if we can have a lead outside attorney and try to discourage every organization from having an attorney, we need to work better with our partners, and we need to make sure that we don't end up with 5, 6, or sometimes even 8 attorneys that are on the payroll at the same time working on a problem. So I hope that you can be very strategic and focus on getting the job done without becoming a lawyer employment agency. Thank you.
Councilmember Radina.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly echo thanks to Attorney Cower and legal staff for jumping on this and getting this quickly to us so that we can pass it tonight and don't have to wait another week and a half. I also want to echo that this is something that I don't think can take more seriously. We need to do everything within our power and our legal scope to make sure that we're making sure that there are consequences for this, not only to protect our community, but also to ensure that the polluter is held accountable. State Representative Robbie has been mentioned tonight. I do want to thank him as well. I've been in communication with him a couple of times over this already. And unfortunately, this is not the first time that he has had to call out this polluter during his tenure in Lansing. As was already mentioned this evening, this polluter has previously discharged PFAS into the Huron River. And unfortunately, we continue to have weak laws at the state level. And so I encourage, as the mayor pointed out, we don't have that enforcement ability, but the Washtenaw delegation has previously called for action to be taken against Tri-Bar, and having stronger polluter pay laws and making sure that we can shut down folks that are bad actors that are polluting our drinking water, and needs to happen. And so I just want to commend the work being done by our Washtenaw delegation in Lansing as well. I know that this is a team effort, but I want to thank our attorney for jumping on this and say that you have my full support in pursuing every avenue to make sure that this actor is held accountable. Thank you.
Further discussion? I just want to comment very briefly on two aspects of information distribution. First, I'd say with respect to the health safety of the river, the health and safety of the city's water, our efforts to protect same, we can and we will be 100% transparent. When we understand the situation, we will communicate it. When we understand what we are doing, we will communicate it. When we understand the circumstances that are before us, we will communicate it. At the same time, the Gelman litigation occurred in a specific context. It occurred in the context of a settlement negotiation. It occurred in the context of a judge's order to remain silent with respect to the matter. Further, it occurred in the context of attorney-client privilege. Communication with respect to legal strategy and legal and case ebbs and flows. Publication of that material, of course, would be a violation of attorney-client privilege, but more to the point, it would be detrimental to the city's legal position. And so we will walk that line. We will observe attorney-client privilege. We will make sure that our legal position is strong. But when we understand, when we have information with respect to the public's health and safety, with respect to the health and safety of our water and our river, we will communicate it without hesitation, with clarity, and with accuracy. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have a closed session today?
No, Mayor, we do not.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petition, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by.
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
we have a DS item.
Oh, yes, we do. My apologies. Closed session inquiry was just in bold in my agenda. So, DS1, resolution authorizing summary publication of ordinance 22-1, an ordinance to amend tables 5.15-1, primary use table, and 5.17-2, two-family residential zoning district dimensions of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, amendments to M1 permitted uses and R2A minimum dimensions. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of DS1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Attorney Carr, has a closed session need arisen in the past few moments?
No, sir, it has not.
All right. Do we have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals? May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. We have communications from our city attorney.
Just to express my gratitude for passing the resolution, and we will continue to work diligently. It is very important to us, just as it is to you. So thank you.
We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time, whether at home or in chambers. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at public comment?
Hello again, my name is Evan Suliotis. In continuation of my earlier presentation proposing that this council create an ombudsperson's office as a citizen's advocate, I continue with the example of my mother Lola's experiences. The following exhibits raise serious questions as to the independence of our local courts. Exhibit 11 is a November 5th, 2021 court hearing transcript evidencing a judge's order that motion briefs for hearings be submitted 7 days in advance of any court hearing, so that opposing parties have time to review briefs, respond to briefs, and prepare for the upcoming hearing. The judge's order was a repeat of a Michigan court rule. Exhibit 12 is a district court docket evidencing that the court clerk's office apparently ignored the judge's above order and scheduled a court hearing with less than a day's notice. This legal ambush, a violation of both the judge's own order and Michigan court rules, was an abject denial of 91-year-old Lola's due process rights. The end of the docket sheet evidences the full dismissal of Lola's improperly issued civil infraction ticket, which, if she had lost, threatened fines of up to $2,000 per day, a serious threat. The above hearing related to Lola's attorney, who filed a motion to withdraw after receiving an email from another of Lola's attorneys recommending the issuance of subpoenas calling certain city officials to testify in court. The lack of proper hearing notice by the court resulted in Lola's fully paid attorney being allowed to withdraw 2 workdays in advance of the next hearing date, which followed the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday, and to Lola having to appear in court without attorney representation due to the lack of proper notice. Yet that's what happened. Another attorney contacted the city attorney to request that the upcoming hearing be rescheduled to allow him to attend the hearing, yet the city attorney refused. Not only did the city attorney refuse, the city attorney told the calling attorney that Lola had multiple previous attorneys, lawyer speak, saying, "This is a bad client, you don't want to get involved," thereby running the risk that Lola would fail to secure legal representation. This was not the only time the city attorney made such a statement. No public sector attorney should ever make remarks that might cause city residents, who they are charged to protect, fail to secure legal representation. During my mother's hearing, I myself was in a 4-day trial as the plaintiff in a legal malpractice case related to the very same Unit 3 apartment, whose 2017 building permits had been improperly revoked by city officials, as described in my earlier presentations. This is an interconnected web, raising even further questions. Council, please create an ombudsperson's office, because this kind of misbehavior must stop.
Thank you.
The best captain doesn't rush in front. The fiercest fighter doesn't bluster. The big winner isn't competing. The best boss takes a low footing. This is the power of non-competition. This is the right use of ability. To follow heaven's lead has always been the best way. Thoughtful people hear about the way and try to follow it. Ordinary people hear about the way and wander onto it and off it. Thoughtless people hear about the way and make jokes about it. It wouldn't be the way if there were no jokes about it. So they say, the way's brightness looks like darkness. Advancing on the way feels like retreating. The plain way seems hard going. The height of power seems a valley. The amplest power seems not enough. The firmest power seems feeble. Perfect whiteness looks dirty. The pure and simple looks chaotic. The great square has no corners. The great vessel is never finished. The great tone is barely heard. The great thought can't be thought. The way is hidden in its namelessness, but only the way begins, sustains, fulfills.
Thank you.
Hello, how you doing? Brandon Dimchef, 4th Ward. I just wanted to say thank you for fixing most of R2. I think that was a good call. I personally don't think it matters who might have a slight appreciation in their property value if it meets the goals of the city. It seems like a good call to me. So, and I also wanted to say that the voting chart for tonight is already up on a2council.vote, which I spoke about at the last meeting, but if you go to a2council.vote right now, you can see the voting chart. That you kept it pretty easy for me tonight, though, so try harder next time, maybe. Have a good one.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who'd like to speak at public comment? Ms. Boudry, is there anyone online who'd like to speak at public comment?
Hello.
Mr. Ray, go ahead.
My name is Abdul, and I'm here to talk about R2A. I am very happy that some of R2A is fixed. I wish that 100% of R2A is fixed. I think that in order to, perhaps conform to the historic character of the city, it should be potentially a good idea to make the historical character of the city legal. And I'd like to call on council to continue this and to make every parcel in R4C conforming. And also to continue in the same vein of making it easier to build houses on smaller lots and with smaller amounts of land attributed to them by reducing minimum lot sizes for single-family zone parcels, perhaps adopting the dimensions of R1E across R1A, B, C, D, and E, and removing the maximum house size from the R1E provision, and adopting a system that would allow for people to lot splits and to build smaller houses on what used to be a large lot. I think this would be positive for the city because there's a lot of opportunities for a smaller house to be built, but unfortunately, in a lot of situations, it's just illegal. And going back to R4C, if you scroll around the city to a lot of our old neighborhoods, like the one I used to live in this past year, pretty much all of the parcels are non-conforming. And it's strange because they were built that way and it's no longer legal. And it's not for any objective reason. It's actually kind of unclear why they have been made non-conforming, unless you want to say that they are non-conforming because they'd like to prohibit, the planners of the city or the politicians of the city want to prohibit development. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a good idea because we are facing a housing crunch. We don't have enough housing, and it's really hard to build any in the city. In fact, the city has built hardly any housing this year, less than 70 units, I believe, or permitted less than 70 units of housing this year. And I think that we could do a better job of making Ann Arbor a welcoming place for more people to be able to live in by reforming our zoning categories to make the historical buildings in them legal again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Juskevich, do you have a comment?
Yeah, hi, Adam Juskevich from the 4th Ward here. I agree with the previous caller that it would be great to do some similar reforms in R4C and make some of our historical land use policies legal again. And thank you for the changes to R2. I think they'll be good. You know, it's a kind of an 80-20 solution, but you know, every little bit helps. And the main thing I just want to mention is, you know, thank you to everybody who voted and congratulations to the winners and to the outgoing council members. Thank you for your service to the community. And just thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Good evening again. Tom Stolberg calling from Lower Town. As I started earlier, I want to support Evan S. Sorry, Evan, I would mispronounce your name, so I won't try. His call for an ombudsman position at the city. As somebody who has a background in development, construction management, my partner is a builder, I'm a broker, the number of calls and emails I get from neighbors and friends asking for help. They're trying to do something in the city. They've run into a little glitch or whatever, and it's hard to navigate. And sometimes they'll go to their city council person and ask for help, and then I end up getting eventually an email from a city council person saying, can you help this person? So there's definitely a need. Anecdotally, I can express that. And especially when we're talking about the individual citizen who may not know how to contact or may not have personal contact with somebody in real estate or a structural engineer or an architect or whoever they might need to go to for some advice. And often they don't need to hire that person, but they end up hiring that person to get the advice that would have been available if we had somebody with just general knowledge at the city available to that person in this ombudsman role. So I support that. I also like to talk about stormwater in general. While we go for A20 carbon neutrality in 2030, by the time we get to 2030, you're going to be looking at the impacts of climate change in terms of stormwater on the city. It's coming. There's nothing we can do to stop it from coming, but it's how we manage it. I do understand that the bulk of our city was developed prior to stormwater management techniques, and that right now we do about the maximum we can do for new construction, and Ann Arbor and Washington County in particular are good with stormwater management for new projects. However, what we really need is the new projects to do more than we can require them to do to make up for what we're missing on the old stuff. We can do that with incentives, because you can't ask them to do more than you can require them to do. I mean, you can ask, but by incentivizing them. And one of the opportunities we have is in TC1. Redevelopment is the perfect time to take a hold of properties and not
30
just bring them
seconds.
up to the current standard, but bring them beyond the current standard. And so we can do that with incentives that are embedded into our zoning changes like TC1 and other types of incentives. Again, it's not going to be, it's coming. We need it. The city's going to have to do with massive infrastructure costs if we don't do it on an individual redevelopment basis. So let's incentivize developers to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Maltini, do you have a comment?
Yes, I would like to say that I'm very grateful how R2 has fully fixed everything around, and I'm just grateful that y'all are the people and how y'all have approved turtle abortions and everything of that sort. I mean, it's really changed my life as a breeder, and I'm really excited to be how y'all have become the #1 LGBTQ supporters in Louisiana. Yeah. Brother Christopher Taylor, you look very handsome today. Very, very slappable forehead. Sorry, it came out. I couldn't control it. My bad. Anyway, go Michigan.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed.
One more, Mayor.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Caller 464, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. Linda Brower. I want to thank you for taking the resolution to do something to challenge Tri-Bar. I really appreciate that. A shout out also to Yusuf Rabi, and I think Rebecca Esselman also of HRWC publicly came out encouraging our community to take a real strong stand. So thank you for that resolution. And speaking about water, I want to mention also the stormwater issue. Thank you for Councilman Ramlawi for bringing up the stormwater issue again, and also for Mr. Dahoney recognizing that it is an issue, and I'm glad to hear that there's kind of an interdepartmental group at the city looking at it. I know that Jerry's most recent update to the building code in terms of what can be done residential and floodplains has been and floodways and floodplains has been a great improvement, but I think we need to do more. Things are going to get worse in terms of rain, and we need to do more. And one thing that I hope, Mr. Dahoney, your group will consider is bringing back a resolution that was brought forward some years ago but didn't go anywhere, and that is to restrict any new construction in the remaining open spaces that we have that are in the floodplain. That would be inclusive of the floodway and the flood fringe. And especially on city-owned properties, I think it would be hard to make that restriction on private property, although maybe that can be looked into, but certainly on city-owned property, we shouldn't be building anything. That should be totally permeable, open space. And of course, the two main city-owned properties that I'm thinking of are at 415 West Washington and 721 North Main. So I hope your working group will look into that, Mr. Dahoney, and I encourage everybody at the city to really take a serious look at that and see if you can bring a recommendation to council in that vein. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Griswold.
I want to add my support to an ombudsperson within the city, at least one, something that I've talked about before, and this does not reflect poorly on any staff members, but the culture and the system of our organization is very weak when it comes to feedback loops. And so frequently what we're hearing about at the council table is not reality. I think an ombudsperson would help with that communication. And also we talk about the need for more housing. We talk about the need for affordable housing, but we've never had an honest conversation about what are the key constraints that are preventing it. We have this rally cry about upzone, upzone, upzone. But what I hear from developers is they have a difficult time working through the building department, so given a choice, they do not build in Ann Arbor. So I would ask staff to explore that and also seriously consider an ombudsperson. Lastly, I've mentioned before Anne Applebaum. She wrote a book, The Twilight of Democracy. She's also a well-respected author. She was at the Ford School of Public Policy in April of this year. There's a podcast available. You just have to Google her name, Democracy in Crisis, while she talks more about what's happening at the country level. There are some lessons to be learned by listening to her podcast. Thank you.
Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you. A few things, I guess. First, with CA11, we awarded a $900,000 contract to Fonson Company. It's good to see us still being able to work with many different contractors. I know this contractor, I thought, in my opinion, was treated very poorly a couple months ago. So I'd just like to highlight some of the inconsistencies that I experience here and what transpires. Secondly, I'd also like to expand on what Councilmember Griswold just said. That is the number one feedback that I receive, is that working with the city is difficult. I've had many firms respond to inquiries that I've put in that simply won't work in this city because of the difficulties. So most contractors put a premium, a 20% premium, when you come to work in Ann Arbor for all of the extra work and time and money it takes to do something in this city. So that all translates to the bottom line. Lastly, there's been a lot of enthusiasm about R2A tonight, which is great. But what we're seeing here is a pattern systematically of changing our land use plan in bits and pieces and dribs and drabs without undergoing the comprehensive land use plan. And there's a bunch of unintended consequences. A city is a system. When you change one thing, you're going to alter many things within that system. This council, frankly, does not take a holistic approach to land use, which circumvents a lot of public input. You can look at TC1 in the west side of town, where only people who live within 300 feet are being noticed.
Councilmember.
Thank you.
Councilmember Breyer.
Thank you. Just to respond briefly to concerns about the development process being difficult here in Ann Arbor. I certainly have had those same discussions with developers myself, and that is one reason, although not the only reason, that I've been working with the city administrator and with folks on the Economic Development Corporation Board to look at how we can take a holistic look at our development and building processes and look at what we need to change because, to the very point tonight, we are looking at, moving it forward on making just one small change that can open up opportunities for new development of housing. And as we look at more opportunities for that continued expansion of housing in our community, we do need to make sure that our processes are as efficient as possible so that new housing can be built as quickly as possible because we are way behind the curve. So more to come on that, but did just want to, since it came up, wanted to just give a little heads up that that is already in the works.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Song.
I appreciate the iterative work that we do here at this table when we talk about land use and land and development. Not too long ago, we approved the Sartorius project, and in the same night also approved TC1. So yes, there are systems at play when we talk about how do we develop our city so that we can address that, in that case, brownfield work remediation that needed to be done to welcome a corporation that decided to build their business here, employ folks here, pay taxes here, and hopefully house them here. So I appreciate the systematic and iterative work that comes from this table. I also wanted to share that Councilmember Dish and I have reached out to staff, and we're trying to figure out how we can help organize and co-host a town hall on how we approach road improvements. There's been a lot of questions on how we choose projects and how we prioritize road repair. So we're hoping that we can work alongside staff and clarify how that work, that iterative work again, is approached. So thank you.
Further communication from council. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Radina, second by Councilmember Ryer. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.